So, Assalamu alaikum. This is July 7th, 2025, MAP5, Muslim American Power 5. I'm your co-host, Amatullah Alaji-Sabrie, with the Honorable Cheryl Sudduth, our co-host also. And hopefully we'll be joined by Brother Fleming El-Amin, our third musketeer here on MAP5. And we have with us a long-standing supporter, Brother Ishmael Fahmy from Dallas, Texas, with us also. So, why don't we look and see what happens when we go to a live stream? Live stream. Yes, it takes me to the currency can access manage your YouTube account. We have some access, make sure you trust them. Okay. Okay. I wanted to go public, but let's see. Okay, didn't quite get that. Maybe if you could, let me see. We try Facebook. I think I just don't know all of the prompts that you're supposed to answer. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see what happens. Looks like it might be successful with Facebook.
Because it went to one or more apps. And there he is.
Hmm?
Okay.
Okay. I think it's on the like-minded people page.
All right, finally. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Dynamic.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I apologize, but sisters.
Okay, there you go. All right. All right. Alhamdulillah. So we are live streaming on Facebook. I couldn't quite figure out the live streaming on the YouTube channel. But I think that it should. Okay, here we go. Brother Fleming, you want to open us up?
All right, alhamdulillah. We'll open up with our Fatiha, inshallah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. With the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, most gracious, most merciful, master of all the systems of knowledge. Thee do we serve and the need we seek. Show us the straight way. The will those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, and not those who go astray or incur thy wrath. Amen.
Amen. Alhamdulillah. You know what, before we start, Sister Cheryl, with your opening, I just have to make this comment. I love that dashiki you have, Brother Fleming, that you're wearing today. And it
Thank you.
brought to
Alhamdulillah.
my mind that I think my niece was telling my husband that in Ghana, they had discovered a new site of nickel,
Hmm.
the hugest finds to date of nickel reserves. So that's certainly
Hmm.
going to
Hmm.
bring another dimension to the ascendancy of the global South, as they like to say. But your
Yeah.
Shiki reminded me of that. So I'm sorry, Honorable Cheryl
Oh,
Sudduth.
no problem.
Um,
This came from Ghana. Actually, I bought it when I was in Ghana, literally. So you made the direct connection.
yeah, beautiful. Alhamdulillah. Honorable Cheryl Sudduth with her avatar in back of her.
Yes, it's gonna be like this for the month. Not sure, but I'll probably change it. I don't know.
Good, that's good. It's fresh.
Yes, yes, it's right. Today is already the 7th of July.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and we have had a whole month wrapped up, a whole year wrapped up into 1 week,
A whole year
Mhm.
after.
Mhm. Mhm.
into 1 week.
Okay.
So, what has you in the spirit of me? What has you weekend saying it's gonna be all right? And what has you been holding? It might both be the same thing. I don't.
Mhm.
What has you? What has you just? Yeah, this isn't. Yeah, this isn't working.
Mhm.
And what has you? It's gonna be okay.
Mhm.
Well, it's going to be okay. I'll jump in first, Brother Fleming.
Yes, ma'am.
That's why I wore my little scarf. I'm gonna name this my Bermuda scarf because the turquoise reminds me of when I
Mhm.
was in Bermuda. And so, if there are any Bermudaites or lovers of Bermuda, um, I'm with you today. So that's why I'm wearing my Bermuda scarf because Allah is in charge and everything is going to be all right. I don't know what song it is. Maybe it's a Bob Marley song. Um, my daughter has put it on my playlist on her phone. So I was doing some work yesterday and it came on, and that made me feel like, yeah, that's right. Everything's going to be all right. Allah's in charge, regardless to what. these totally unethical, spineless leaders that we have in office today on both sides of the aisle, regardless to what they do or don't do, everything is going to be all right because Allah is definitely in charge. And I want to say before I go on, um, definitely our concerns and our condolences to the families of those who lost their life in the flooding in Texas. I think especially Kerrville or Kerr County had so far has had the largest number of uh, deceased maybe that have been recovered, and I believe that there's still 10 children missing from that campsite, Camp Mystic. Um, so, but even with that, everything is going to be all right because death by drowning is a category in which martyrs exist, and they are assured the paradise, and certainly Allah is the best knower, and Allah knows best. So I wanted to say that before I forgot. And as far as what has me holding my head is, of course, like everyone else, that big ugly bill, um, waiting for the other shoe to drop as people begin to experience the effect of it. We know they've structured it so that certain things roll in at a time, strategically planned so that they don't roll in before the midterms, so that the party that's in control right now hopes that that will mitigate um, the voters coming after them for what they have done. I hope that it doesn't mitigate it, and I hope that people wake up and are um, motivated enough to be more active in what's going on and to um, participate, participate in this process because without our participation on whatever level you can participate, someone else is controlling your future. So that's me.
Mhm. Well, I've got to first compliment you on your Bermuda headpiece there.
Thank you.
I've been blessed. Cassandra and I went to Bermuda a long, long time ago. What a time to be grateful, actually. Had a wonderful time over there. And
Yeah.
enjoying that delicious rum cake, too. I'll pause right there on that one.
What
But
fruit?
in terms of what's got me really uplifted in my spirit, we had recently here One Love Festival, and it's really rooted in the concepts of Bob Marley and his efforts when he was with us. But it's a 3-day festival, and we have a number of different activities related to how can we better unite to serve humanity through music, through educational experiences, through the arts. All those elements were included, and we had all kind of people from all over the country to come in to participate. So that uplifted my spirits quite a bit. And I was one of the ones who helped the brother organize that for the last 5 years here in Winston-Salem. So it sort of parallels to what we do every 2 years here. It's called the National Black Theater Festival, where you have thousands of people come in. They put on live performances from major professional theater groups. We have outstanding people to serve as, I guess you could call the face of the festival, Hollywood stars, etc. Denzel Washington was one of the first ones to come through when it first got started years ago to sort of co-sponsor the event along with Maya Angelou. So that's an ongoing festival also in the city. We call it what's the name that we put on your purple and black? It's time to get back and enjoy the festival one more year. So it's a festival occasion called the National Black Theater Festival. It happens every 2 years in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. What has me concerned, I've been asked to read through almost a 900-page document. I'm referring to the bill, that monstrous, ugly bill that just passed, and make it to our community. For some reason, people think that I can do that. I said, listen, this is a 900 page. Give me a week. So I have no idea. It's a fallacy for somebody to read the document, understand what's in it, and then vote overnight on passing or filling the document. And I'm going to try to point out the fallacy of how decisions are made sometimes in Congress. Now, just imagine you got a 900-page document in front of you to read for homework. First, you got to see how it affects your state, if you have any kind of sense of principles. Then, how does it affect the broader country? And does it really represent your principles as a representative of your people in your specific districts? So I've waded through this kind of thing before, even when Reagan was in office. Most of those guys never read the whole document. They read an executive summary, and they take the lead from either the majority leader or minority leader of the party on what's important. But in terms of them reading the document, over the years, I've been able to challenge some of these guys and say, look, what's on page 222? They have no idea, many of them. Every now and then you run across one who really goes to work, he goes to task, he'll have his administrative assistant to read certain parts of it, and they bring back to him a summary. But brothers and sisters, even with that, it's a disturbing element. We can have faith that indeed, they did not make the sun, they didn't make the earth, not even one blade of grass. This creation comes from Almighty God Allah. So let's not lose focus. Let's be prepared to be engaged more, to keep people in office who represent your interests, your concerns, and your future, and get rid of those who do not do that. And hopefully that'll inspire you to really get off the sidelines, stop being so critical in terms of just waiting on opinions, but get involved in the actual process and do something about it. To get in some good trouble, as our leader, John Lewis, would say quite often. Like there's a movement going across the country called "It's Time to Get into Some Good Trouble Again." It's a national effort, actually, and maybe you'll read more about that, inshallah, going forward. But those are my major two, and I apologize for coming on a little behind schedule here. I was involved in, believe it or not, 3 different Zoom meetings this morning before we came on. I'm going to slow down after this, inshallah.
I believe it. I believe it. You got your hands in a lot of pots.
Yes, ma'am.
Good
Alhamdulillah, we're here.
trouble, good trouble, good trouble. Honorable Cheryl Sudduth, so why don't you share with us?
I think for me, what has me really like, I don't know if it's puzzled or just like, don't abide by their word.
Hmm.
So whether that's politics or something else, it's when people don't abide by their word or something that struck me lately is, you ever have an experience where you think you know someone, but then all of a sudden something happens and you question the entire person's character relationship. So that's how
Yes.
yeah, because you wonder, and then you start to question yourself because, like, where did I see this or whatever it was? So I think that that's kind of what has me like, you try not to be cynical, but, creep in
You're
there.
frozen, Cheryl. Okay.
No, that's just me.
Oh, okay.
I'm really good at sitting still.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it makes your cynicism heightened, right?
Mm.
So that one, what has me, and it goes back to what you say, Sister Metzl, about the floods, right? I was a Girl Scout leader. We did a lot of camping. And just like, I don't get it. Who didn't do something? Who didn't evacuate a camp full of girls? There was 90 something girls there. Why were they allowed to just stay in the camp? And it's just really mind-boggling to me that instead of answering that question, everybody's they're moving on. They talked around it if you look at the conferences. But if you can't figure that out, that means that, the next one is going to be just as much danger. Sometimes you have to look at what role we or you whoever plays in something that happens so that you can learn from it. But too many people are so afraid, I guess, of really being able to face themselves and realize that it's not. My second part, it's gonna be all right.
Mhm.
It's gonna be all right. And all right doesn't always mean it's gonna be good. It just means it's gonna be all right. You
Isn't
still
it?
gotta deal with the consequences. You still gotta deal with that, like my grandmother say, either do right or deal with the there's gonna be
Mhm.
some there's gonna be some repercussions and consequences. You still gotta deal with that. Not but in the grand scheme of things, he's gonna be all right.
Gonna be all
He's
right.
gonna be all right. After you deal with them repercussions and consequences, it's gonna be all right. But we run away from it, and I'm saying that, and I say we because I've watched elected officials do these all the time and do this dance between you know what he's right, you know what he's not, and then look what happened. And they pass this bill anyway. So yeah, I don't think the bill is any good, blah, 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 blah. And they give you all this rhetoric, and then they go right on in there and say, okay. So uh, that was it. Es todo.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Or you're
Mhm.
against it because it doesn't cut deep enough. I mean, that's the mind-blowing one for me, you know.
Yeah, but I was against it
Yeah.
before I was for it. So I was against it before I was for it, and then I was against it,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna vote for it
Right. Boy. But anyhow,
because I want my
it's
Mhm.
job.
gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right,
It's
inshallah.
gonna be all right
Mhm.
because the universe always wins, just like the house wins. The universe always wins.
Always wins. Yes. Yes. Mm.
So es todo for me.
Mm.
Mm.
I don't know how we hold people's feet to the fire, not just in politics. I mean, everybody, friends, family, everybody.
Yes.
Bills,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
bills too, right? So it's
Um,
very easy. It's very easy to push it off on someone else. So
mhm, yeah.
Walaikum assalam, man. You finna leave?
I I wanted to talk about continue the conversation that Brother Fleming had last week about vote suppression, because it's all related to um, what we see going on based on who is elected to what position, um, who is appointed to what position, what's the basis of these appointments, is it just loyalty to an individual? Is it loyalty to the oath that people have taken for these positions? And when you look at the actions that both the Senate and the House took, you have to wonder, who are they loyal to? Who are they actually representing? And does that entitle, sometimes, well, being a leader, any kind of leader, whether it's a mother in the house, a father, with family decisions, overall family decisions, a manager on a job, an elected official, sometimes, a lot of times, the decisions that you make, they are very tough decisions. You have to really weigh, like you said, what are the consequences of the decisions that you are that you are asked to make, And a lot of times I think it depends on the creativity level of the people making these decisions, as far as it's not either or. Maybe it's both and. Maybe it's options that if you deliberate more, if you give your time to positive deliberation instead of uh, taking pot shots at one another, you can come up with a creative solution to lessen, perhaps, I won't say the harm, but lessen the effect of the consequences of what you're voting for.
The impact.
And
Right.
I think that we really suffer from that because the nature of a democracy and the nature or the process of coming to a consensus is a tedious one. It takes time, or it should take time, for complex issues. It should take time, it should take thought, it should take um, positive conversations that are focused on the issues that are before you to try and come up with a decision that can satisfy as many interests as possible. And even if it doesn't satisfy those interests right now, at least some kind of timeline or some kind of plan towards how can we move towards a situation that really can be good, can have a good outcome, you know, rather than constructing a narrative. Oh, this is a big, beautiful bill. Okay. I know beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Maybe that's why they named it that, because for a lot of people, it's going to be very, very ugly, unfortunately. Um, I would suggest, I just saw some, uh, I, I've, I read through this book previously that the Imam, um, some of his thoughts that's published or edited by Brother Ronald Shaheed, Attaining the Ethical Society. That's the title of it. It's not coming up. I think because, oh, there it is. Attaining the Ethical Society, Thoughts of W. Dean Muhammad. It's a small book, 118 pages, different topics. One that he had was on watching over the thinking of leaders, watching over the thinking of leaders, which I think is very important for us to review, especially in this time. And he goes into the idea of ethics. And just a quick couple of phrases, a couple of paragraphs I'd like to read. He says, and this is in the section that's chapter 3, watching over the thinker of leaders. And the this particular paragraph is ethical is a higher expression of moral life. Ethical is a higher expression of moral life. In Scripture, God promises us another creation. He gives us in our creation even our moral sensitivities. Those sensitivities come into our reasoning, and we look at our logic and we say, that logic is not ethical. So, ethical is just a higher expression of moral life. We want ethical life or an ethical society. It is only a higher expression of the moral life that we want. It is higher because now we are obligating our logic to be fair, our logic to be compassionate, and it is usually the logic that creates the, the real problem for society. So it's usually the logic that creates the real problem for society. When the leaders do not have the bashar, they are not humanly sensitive. When they get into authority and they start ordering the society and influencing the order of the society, they can take us into an ugly, hard, and oppressive society, and it will punish us rather than show us mercy. It will give us pain and misery rather than mercy or compassion. or compassion. So that kind of struck me in thinking about what is going on right now, and also the continuation of that topic of vote suppression that Brother Fleming introduced to us last week. And I went back and just did a couple of quick searches to get a couple of points to start off the conversation. And I hope, well, first I will say, if you use the Substack app, if you become familiar with that, they have a lot of good presenters on the Substack, regardless to what side or what position, if you see yourself as conservative or moderate or progressive, whatever. There seems to be a lot of good thought that's being promoted on that particular app. Um, and there was a good discussion. There were two good discussions last week that were leading up to the bill, and then also thoughts as far as the future with the midterms elections. Well, actually, there were three. Zateo has a good, they show a film. Mehdi Hassan started that Substack Zateo when he left MSNBC. The organization Fair Fight, they launched a new Substack that's called Rights and Insights. Rights and Insights. Now, Fair Fight is the organization that was co-founded by Stacey Abrams, and the other woman, I'm blanking on her name now. It's a hyphenated last name. They started Fair Fight in looking at what was happening in Georgia in terms of vote suppression and purging of voter rolls before the election where Stacey Abrams was running against Kemp. And so that the first presentation on that Rights and Insights was really excellent. And I would encourage people, if you get that Substack app, that you will probably gain a lot from that particular discussion. There were the two co-hosts of the Substack, and they had another guest on. I want to say it was Joy Reid, but I don't believe it was Joy Reid. Joy Reid was on the the third Substack, which was Left Hook with Wahajid Ali, um, which which was very interesting. She was very free. You could tell the difference of people who have worked in corporate media when they get in an environment where they can express what they think and not what a producer wants them to put on the air. It's really interesting seeing the change in the information that they present. So those three Substacks, I think, have good information, and there are others. Chris Hedges has one, um, but there are others, and as if you go to it and you start to listen to the different commentators, um, I think you'll find that there's some good information that's being shared there. Um, and so anyway, in looking at the voter suppression, I had mentioned to Brother Fleming last week that through this program and through interaction with him, actually, also, and his experiences in the politics there in North Carolina, I've come to realize that North Carolina has really been important in a lot of court decisions, the Supreme Court decision, Shelby v. Holder, this whole, redistricting, gerrymandering. So a lot has gone on with North Carolina that is very interesting to me. And I hope that, Brother Fleming, in the future, you will keep us up to date with what is actually happening there in North Carolina and giving us a real strong historical perspective of that. And the legislator, um, I don't know why people do this to me. And State Representative Nassif, when he was on the program for the veterans, he had so many um, really illuminating and informative discussion points and comments that I would, and I know that he's very busy, so we have to try and schedule maybe when the legislature isn't in session there. But I think it would be very good to have him engage in also this idea of voter suppression. So, looking back at the history of vote suppression in the US, I think the very first mistake that was made was the founders not really foreseeing the diabolical nature of those who would come to power further down the line. And so they didn't initially enshrine the right to vote in the US Constitution because initially voting was restricted to wealthy white landowners. All right. So you had a narrow, I guess that was the original good old boys club here in the US, um, rich white male landowners, because we know women couldn't vote, the indigenous people couldn't vote, the Africans who had been brought over here couldn't vote. So it was a setup from the beginning. In 1870, with the 15th Amendment, the amendment prohibited the states from taking away the right to vote on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, but states could still impose qualifications to be a voter. So that's kind of the loophole, or let's say the back door that is open, because now you have the states have the freedom to impose the qualifications, and then we see that in the Jim Crow area, for an example, one statistic that I found was that Mississippi had a constitutional convention, state constitutional convention, and the only or the main purpose of that constitutional convention was to keep us from politics through poll taxes, literacy tests, and also grandfather clauses. Grandfather clauses meaning that if you were a slave in such and such a year, then you are denied the right to vote. So this was the Jim Crow area. So this systematic disenfranchisement of the African American community from voting, especially in Mississippi, with the different tactics that they use with a poll tax, um, a literacy test, a any other kind of qualification. Here's a jar with marbles in it. How many marbles are in that jar? If you can't come up with the right answer, okay, you're disqualified. You can't vote. That systematic disenfranchisement in Mississippi alone, it reduced the percentage of Black men eligible to vote from over 90% to 6% in a 2-year period of time. From 1890, from when they had the convention to set up these voter qualifications, 2 years later, the participation of eligible African American men went from 90% to 6%. Then in 1965, you had the Voting Rights Act of 65, which outlawed most of the common tactics that were being used, predominantly in the South, but in other states. This wasn't just limited to the South. So the Voting Rights Act of 65 outlawed the most common voter suppression tactics and created federal oversight of states and localities with histories of voter discrimination. Then in 2003 to the present, Supreme Court decision in Shelby County versus Holder. The ruling of the court gutted the Voting Rights Act because it removed the pre-clearance requirements or the federal oversight, declaring the enforcement formula was unconstitutional because it was relying on data that was 40 years old. So it's sort of like saying, oh, well, we don't have those problems nowadays. You're relying on bad data, so we can't continue to enforce this type of federal oversight. So that was the first major blow, or pushing back the gains being made by the Voting Rights Act. Following Joe Biden's defeat of Donald Trump, Republican lawmakers began implementing new laws based on false claims of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. By April 2021, so you had the election in November, 5-6 months later, in 2021, April, 361 bills in 47 states had been proposed to restrict voting access. So this is a serious assault on voting access of all American citizens. Since 2020, the attack has become more sophisticated with the use of technology, with the infusion of billionaire money into the electoral process and supporting organizations and projects and individuals who are bent on suppressing the vote of American citizens and what they deem marginal or minority communities, African American, indigenous population, Asians, which is the fastest growing political group, they say, Hispanics, all right, or Latin people. So there have been many individuals and organizations who have come together in a very organized fashion to suppress the vote. And now the methods that they use, they're not asking you how many marbles in a jar right now. But what they do, they've imposed, I think they have said, I'll get the number in just a minute. North Carolina is now the strictest state in the country with regard to mail-in voting verifications. Voters must produce a photo ID to vote, whether in person or by mail. Mail voters must include a copy of their ID along with a notary's signature or the signature of 2 witnesses. So, voter ID requirements. In an executive order, I believe it was in March, I'll go back and check it, but this current administration is requiring proof of American citizenship in the voter ID requirement the federal voter ID requirement that they placed. People must have a passport or a a government document that verifies their eligibility, their citizenship, which would make them eligible to vote. In the framing of the narrative that there was widespread immigrant or non-U.S. citizen voting in 2020, that has been a large part of the narrative that supports the immigration policies that the administration is trying to enact. Out of, I think, I forgot, they might have said maybe 2 billion or so votes cast over a period of years, there have been maybe 85 instances of non-citizens voting. In all of the research and all of the investigations and all of the money spent to find out widespread fraud, in spite of the narrative that the 2020 election deniers have come up about many thousands of non-citizens and people who have come across the border to vote, over the span of going back before 2020 to 2020 and beyond, they have only found 85 cases of non-citizens voting. So that narrative is false, but people put it out there, put it out there, put it out there, put it out there. So voter ID requirement is a critical method that they use. And then, sometimes you might say, well, what's the big deal? People have a state voter ID. Remember, they brought in the real ID for you to be able to fly. Now, here in California, I think May 27th was a cutoff point. You had to have a real ID or a passport or a birth certificate to be able to meet the TSA requirements to fly. I'm not sure what the requirement is in other states, but when you look at the real ID, there is a cost to that real ID. And some people may not be able to afford that cost, but not being able to afford that cost, and definitely the cost for a passport. The cost for a passport is probably 2 or 3 times the cost for a state ID. So many people are pushing back, many organizations are pushing back on that whole voter ID requirement, proof of citizenship. And then the mail-in voting restrictions. We know that mail-in voting's really exploded during COVID. And actually, it proved to be perhaps a better option for people who have physical disabilities, the elderly, people who may have chronic conditions, that a mail-in voting system accommodates rather than having to go in person. And there are even in the executive order that the current administration put forward, there are even mail-in voting restrictions for military people who are deployed out of the country. So what is the fairness of that? And they have to provide proof that they are an American citizen also. And the time restraint with the proposed executive order, there's also a limitation on counting after the election day itself based on the number of ballots that come in after the election days, as long as they have been postmarked. Now, what is being proposed is that all the ballots have to be in by the date of the election. Another popular method that they're using is polling place access. And sometimes you'll see reporting of this on corporate media, but I haven't seen any really in-depth study of the consequences of it, where, for example, in Georgia, lawmakers made it a crime to provide food and water to voters standing in line at the polls. Lines that are notoriously long in Georgia, especially for communities of color. So there used to be organizations, I think Black Vote Matters or something, they would have water that they would provide for people who had been standing in line for hours. In his movie, the best democracy money can buy, Greg Palast, he shows how in Ohio, I think it was in Ohio, they closed down so many of the voting places in these communities of color, giving less access to more polling places. And people were in long out. I mean, people stand in line for hours. You know, I know here in California with myself, I have to be honest about it. If I had to stand in the line a half an hour, I have a real attitude by the time I get to the poll, to put my vote in. And that shows how you can really um, be colored in your thinking about these things if it doesn't directly affect you the way that it affects someone else. And is in that movie, he interviews a gentleman and he says, "Well, how long have you been in the line?" He said, "A while, hours." And I'm thinking to myself, hours? But these are people who are dedicated to their responsibility, and they um, have a sensitivity to the price that others before us have paid so that we would have the freedom to vote. So, in that one scene he shows in that movie is how after he talks to, and you see the line that stretches out, and this is in Ohio, stretches out, and there was a church that he visited that they came together as a church, and I think they had voting on a Sunday. And so after services, they loaded up the vans and the cars, and the church members went to vote, and especially for the elderly members of the congregation, those who had experience, being turned away from being able to vote. They had to stand on these long lines. And then he went to another district, primarily Caucasian district, no wait whatsoever. You go right in, vote, come right out. So closing down polling places is another technique they use. One very significant tool that was used in the 2020 election that he highlights is voter purge. It started in the 2016 election, but um, in the research that I did, one state, Alabama, attempted an illegal and last-minute purge program that put thousands of Alabamians in jeopardy. Only thing that saved it from going into effect was a federal judge halted the systematic removal of voters in the 90 days before the 2024 general election. Um, it might have been in Fair Vote in that Substack. I believe it was there. They showed a clip from Georgia where less than 100 days from the election day, the election board had called a special session where they wanted to change rules that would affect carrying out the elections, mail-in requirements, um, purging of voter rolls, just a whole gamut of things where an administrative body, not an elected body, but an administrative body was attempting to significantly change the election process rather than letting the state legislators do it. Alabama and Idaho passed laws that broadly criminalize certain forms of assistance with absentee voting. So they criminalize any assistance that is given to people relating to mail ballot applications, and Idaho if they criminalize helping people in completing their mail ballots, knowing what the process is, um, and uh, helping people, maybe taking ballots to ballot boxes for folks like elderly people who don't have the mobility. So things like that have fallen into the category of a crime in Idaho and Alabama. Um, I want to go back to the voter roll purge. When Fleming and Cheryl and we did a series on Study al-Islam, and we kept encouraging people, make sure you're registered, brothers and sisters. Check your registration status with your local Secretary of State or your election boards. I didn't realize how valuable and critical that information was until I saw this film and saw how states across the country have been encouraged to join this organization that um, they had thousands of volunteers who would get a list of, and I mentioned this on a previous program here, get a list of voters from the election board and then just challenge. So if there was one example they gave was there was a Willie Mae Nelson in Mississippi, a Willie Nelson, and another maybe Willie J. Nelson. So they would challenge or accuse the three Willies of being one person who had voted in multiple states. Not looking at the middle name. Willie Mae was a female, Willie J was a male, and Willie was a male. And it was actually the country singer Willie Nelson. So he said, "Oh, is that why you got the pigtails? Because you voted first as a woman?" So this shows you how I used the term diabolical, and I was really pretty conscious of using that word as how these different individuals and organizations have mobilized themselves and volunteers to come up with these strategies to keep their fellow citizens from exercising their right to vote so that they can be empowered. And I think it's important for us to realize that. And this is why it is important to keep up, to make sure you're registered, because people have been turned away. They've come to vote and they would say, well, you're not on the polls. You're not on our list. Okay. I think it was in Ohio, the example I gave where the people waited online. Um, After a certain time, when the poll was getting ready to close, they would say, okay, we don't have time for you to get in. You'll have to do a provisional ballot. They'd give them a provisional ballot, which they would fill out their registration and their ballot information at that sitting. Now, with the provisional ballot, it is separated from the regular ballot, and human beings review it, you know? And so, very often, what happens is those provisional ballots may not even be reviewed, they may be tossed aside. There's no accountability of how that particular election site was dealing with provisional ballots. So what happens is the person has innocently filled out the provisional ballot. They think that they have voted and that their vote counts, not knowing that their ballot may have been set aside and never included in the count, or it may have been discredited, or it may have been just discarded. So that's why we say it is important that you know that your registration is current. One trick that they used in Detroit was, I think this was the 2008 cycle. There, there was when the plant of Delco closed down. Delco was a subdivision of GM, and because of the economic conditions, the plant was closed down. The company took on a different name. The Koch brothers took over the company, Delphi. Um, the Koch brothers, billionaires, uh, they hooked up with this guy named Singer, who dealt with mortgage derivatives, security derivatives. This is connecting the dots, right? Rich billionaire Koch brothers, company Delphi, workers laid off. Workers laid off, foreclosures on their home properties. The other billionaire comes up, he convinces Wall Street types to invest in these derivatives. Then, when everything goes south, he didn't tell them that he had interest on the other side of the coin. He gets hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. The workers are in a foreclosed situation. They lose their home. When it comes time to vote, where does that, how does that affect your registration now that you don't live in that home or you don't um, own that home and you don't have the same address that you had previously when you were registered? So in Detroit, during that cycle, many African Americans who were affected by the foreclosures, they also lost their right to vote because their residence was impacted, which made their registration invalid. You know, you worried about sleeping on the street. You're not thinking about voter registration. You're not thinking about, well, I've lost my right to vote because of the dire economic situation that you're in. So this was another tactic that was used in Detroit to deprive people of their right to vote. Um, Another one that was, or two, there's an organization called All Vote. And what they did in 2024, so the election we just had, they sent misleading texts to thousands of Pennsylvania voters. Pennsylvania was a swing state. They sent thousands of Pennsylvania voters texts telling them they had already voted. So they told them they had already voted. In New Hampshire, in the Democratic presidential primary, robocalls falsely claiming to be from Joe Biden urged voters to stay at home. So that was in the Democratic primary before he decided to withdraw from the election. Robocalls had been, and those robocalls, when we say that, we mean those automatic calls go out. So with AI, you can simulate the voice of the person. People get the automatic call. This is Joe Biden. Stay home. You don't have to worry about coming out to the primary. So that was a tactic to deceive people. And then also, you have the practice of election um, observers. There's an organization that they would have election observers, and they showed in, I believe it was in Arizona, one of the open carry states, where election observers would come and they'd have their long gun on their shoulder. And people were intimidated. I mean, what's going to happen with me going to this polling place? You know that we have these mass killings in schools. What's to prevent a mass killing at a polling place? So those are some of the modern techniques that they're using to intimidate and to suppress the vote. Since 2013, when the Shelby Court decision was made, at least 31 states have enacted 114 restrictive voting laws, with 78 restrictive laws passed. So during the period of 2021 to 2024, going up to the presidential election, 78 of those 114 restrictive laws were passed in the different states. In at least 21 states, voters in the 2024 election faced restrictions they had never encountered before in a presidential or midterm election. The pattern shows a clear escalation. Historical suppression was overt and race-based. The civil rights era brought federal protections, and modern suppression uses neutral laws that, on the face of it, they seem like they're neutral, okay? But they disproportionately impact minority communities while claiming to address virtually non-existent voter fraud. So their claim is that we have to put these laws in place to deal with voter fraud. And as we said earlier, a voter fraud that does not really exist. So, Cheryl, I see you shaking your head. I know you've done some training in this area.
I train people on this often. And unfortunately, the voter fraud, a lot of times what they call voter fraud is a misunderstanding or an error or a failure to, as you said, connect the dots, dot the I's and cross the T's. But there are organizations that are similar to what you talked about in the last election that are intentionally deceiving the voters. Putting out, if you recall the last election, they also put out drop boxes that were fake drop boxes. They were not the ones that are maintained by the Secretary of State's office through the counties. And so you put your ballot in there, you don't know where the ballot's going.
Right.
Right? You don't know if it's going to get counted, if it's not going to get counted, because it might as well just open it up and throw some old jeans up in there. Because going the same place in the shredder.
Put the Goodwill donation in there.
He's going the same place in that shredder at Goodwill. So, a lot of times, and I know this seems unfair, but the burden's on us as voters. The burden's not on, and I know, Fleming, you're going to come off mute in a second because I know how you are. The burden is on us, right? We cannot sit here and say, oh, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this to us, and we don't have an alternative. This is one of the things that bothers me the most, is that we become so, what's the word? Like when you're like chased to harshness.
Mm.
Like you're so used. And what'd you say?
The despondent.
No, it's another one. Like when children see crime so much, they see so much that they just become hardened and they can't. There's a word.
Insensitive.
Yeah.
Insensitive. I thought it was a different word, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Say, Brother Fleming, what you say?
Mm-hmm.
It's another word for it. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
Traumatized.
Okay.
Traumatized.
Traumatized. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's very close to desensitized.
Desensitized, yes.
Desensitized.
That's
Okay.
yes,
Desensitized.
Okay.
yes.
Desensitized. So what we do is we become desensitized. And when we are desensitized, guess what else happens? Your creative, the ability to solve problems, to resolve issues, to be creative in doing that also turns off because when you have a really high, I don't care, you have a really low, get things fixed.
Right.
So the thing with the water that I was over here thinking about as you were talking about this was it doesn't say you can't give people water. What it says is you can't give people water while they're waiting in line. So if someone were to, I don't know, sit on the outside of that perimeter of the polling place, like we have to do if we have signs or we're, no electioneering within 100 feet.
Right.
So if someone donated money and had I don't know, a water truck, like they have the little taco trucks, and somebody had a water truck right there before you actually go into the parking lot for the polling place, it's not illegal. It's not illegal. And to make it legal, I'm not giving them anything. They had to give me a nickel. Yeah, the water might cost more than that, but it's donated. Remember, they paid for this water. It cost them a quarter, cost them a nickel, whatever. But see, that's when your creativity can go when you're not so mired in it's just gonna fail anyway. It
Victim.
don't matter. It don't matter. Nothing I do is gonna matter anyway. People get that kind of attitude, and then he's like, well, what's the old saying is to succeed or to fail takes the same type of energy, same amount of energy. To complain and to do takes the same amount of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it might take more to complain, in my opinion, but c'est la vie. Brother Fleming, it's
Mm.
toi.
Yes.
Toi et
Ah,
toi.
merci beaucoup, mon frère. Yes, a couple of things. I'll try to limit it to 30 seconds if I can, but put the clock on.
Oh no, you're not gonna
Start
make
the clock right now.
it.
Let me offer some solutions first, because I worked on the Board of Elections for a number of years here in Forsyth County. And a couple of times we had this avalanche of people saying the votes are not counted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have all kind of systems in place to double check things. Let me be very specific. At one point, they tried to make sure that your signature had not changed in 10 years. So who in the world does write the same way in 10-year period of time to disqualify your vote? It was absolutely insane. But they try to use that as a, how do we get around that? We encourage people to go vote during early voting. Let me say that again. See in your local communities how many days you have in early voting. Why? Because during early voting, you can register to vote and vote at the site. And that's why you have to stay on top of the decisions made by your Board of Elections. They'll put early voting sites away from the community sometime. When I was on the board, we always fought we're going to have so many on the inner city, so many in the suburbs, but we're going to have a balance so people can get to these early voting sites. That saves a whole lot of difficulty when it comes to making sure your vote counts. Now, every state is a little different. In North Carolina, if you vote today, mail-in ballot, the ID has to be a copy of it submitted, et cetera. You got to have at least one notarized signature or two witnesses to verify that indeed that is you. But if you don't wait until that time and vote during early voting cycle, you don't have a problem. It's very important.
Brother Fleming, your sound kicked out
Excuse me.
right when you get to the punchline.
Somebody would call me. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear you. Say it again, please.
Your sound went out as soon as you got to your, your
Oh,
point. Point.
yes. Be sure to check your local community's calendar for early voting. Very, very important. If you can vote during early voting time, it's usually a couple of weeks before the actual election takes place. That saves you a whole lot of unnecessary pain because you can register to vote and vote at that site the same day. Okay? You can avoid the provisional ballots, etc., because you're doing it during early voting. Once the actual voting starts, you don't have that option. So that's why so many people, unfortunately, rely on a provisional ballot if they can't prove who they are when they get to the election cycle, or they should have gone to another precinct because they're registered there and they may have changed their address, etc. But all that can be avoided brothers and sisters, if you take advantage of early voting. Now, let me talk briefly about this, purging the vote cycle. As I said earlier, every state is different. In North Carolina, if you don't vote consecutively for 2 presidential elections, you don't show up. You're registered, but you don't go vote. Legally, by statute, they can remove your name from the ballot or from the voting precinct, and you have to register to vote again. That's why I always encourage people, call down to the Board of Elections or call your state election board and make sure you're still registered to vote long before election day, at least 30 days out. Because some people are so busy, they say, oh, did I vote in the last presidential election? They've forgotten. Did I vote in the one before that? They've forgotten. But to make sure you're still on the registered books, call down at least 30 days to confirm that indeed you're still registered to vote. If you're not, take advantage of that. Go register to vote and submit the information you need to make sure you can register to vote. Now, the big picture, let's go to the big picture for a moment. The Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, it should have been called Billionaire Citizens United, started this whole avalanche of corporations being viewed as citizens and putting all this dog money into the election cycle so that they can buy votes. Prime example, Elon Musk just started a whole party called the American Party, right? Those of us who have been around for a while remember this guy named Roe did the same thing a few years back. Another billionaire tried to establish a third party. He was not successful. But because they have access to so much money, they can afford to try to at least set up a party. But there's a lot more organizing a party than just announcing you're going to start a party. I won't go into all that, but you need a structure behind that to make it effective. He's just, I'm going to say, showboat because he now has he lost his girlfriend in the White House. All right, one last thing, and then I'm going to move on.
You know, this girlfriend.
Rejoin district lines. Yes, keep up with that also, brothers and sisters, because sometimes they will redraw district lines so intentionally limit your voting influence. Prime example here in North Carolina, we once had 14. In fact, we still have 14 congressional districts. Right, the way the laws were redrawn, the lines were redrawn. We had 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans at one point. When the last General Assembly got in power, for the first time you had a Republican governor, Republican majority House, Republican majority Senate. They redrew the lines. And when they redrew those lines, of course, we went to court to challenge it. But by redrawing those lines, guess how it shifted? 11 Republican districts, 3 Democratic districts. Let me say it again. 11 Republican districts, 3 Democratic districts. That's done strategically, by design. We went to the appellate court eventually in Virginia, and they said that was surgically done to make sure they packed certain voters, primarily us, into certain districts. And they said it was illegal. So now we're into this battle now of trying to get this thing redrawn. We were in federal court a couple of weeks ago. The process is still going forward. And I'll conclude with this because I know I've used my 30 seconds. To give an idea how vicious these people can become, they challenged our most recent Supreme Court candidate, young lady, by saying they had 60,000 votes that they could challenge because she won by 742 votes. They carried that insane process out about a year beyond the voting election. Yeah. Finally concluded that indeed she won the election cycle. But can you imagine, you get a contact from the local board, you voted, you thought the vote counted, but they had to go through each one of those counters. But her organization had challenged those voters to say they didn't have this ID or they didn't live here, any kind of stupid thing like that to challenge the validity of that vote. And these people were under that kind of insanity for over a year. And finally, the decision was made. Listen, she won fair and square. Let her take her oath of office to serve on the state Supreme Court. And now she's in place, of course. And that's Justice Riggs. But those are just another examples of how they're still trying to suppress the vote, brothers and sisters. They wouldn't try to suppress it if it wasn't so important. Right. It makes all the difference in the world. Your vote is your voice. Your vote is your voice. And I know I've used my 30 seconds, so I'll hold. I have some more to use my 30 seconds. Thank you very much.
Why don't we extend another 30 seconds to you?
All out about that 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Now, let me just add one thing, sister, to Brother Fleming. When we talk about not being able to vote. And people call this voter suppression, and I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to go back to what I just said. Um, it falls on us. It does not fall on the government. It falls on you. There's several times when you are not permitted to vote because you haven't done what you're supposed to do. So Brother Fleming just gave you an example, right? Go and check, make sure. So when you move, it's your responsibility. It's your responsibility. The government's not gonna come and shake you and look for you. Hey, sister, you didn't live there last time. Come on in here. Because they don't want you voting. So it's up to you when you renew your driver's license, right? You renew your driver's license, especially in California, it's automatic that you get that you are enrolled. And it's up to you to make sure they don't take you out of a party because they're very good at taking you out of a party or putting you in the wrong party, right? Um, and then the other one is when you get married, divorced, change your name. For Muslims, change from one name to another name. Any of those circumstances can cause you not to be on the voter rolls because those voter rolls are determined by the information that they're provided from the state and from you. So you are in control of that. You can't get mad if you show up and your name and you show up with Gloria Jones and now your name is, Fatima Akbar and you never went in and I made it up. Don't nobody named Fatima Akbar be calling me. I just made the name up. And you walk in and you mad because they don't let you vote, but you didn't show, and you still have a license that says the other name on it. I've seen people get turned away because they don't look like their license, right? Well, that license don't look like you. So if you wore glasses when you took your photo, wear the glasses when you go in to get identified. If you're going directly in, if you're not mailing it, right? If If you wore hijab in your photo, wear hijab when you go in to vote. Don't be making these people try to figure out, wait, I mean, that could be her. She got some dreadlocks and now she got some braids in. That could be her. Can you turn your head to the right a little bit? Tilt it. Tilt it. Get under the light. You okay? Look a little bit like her. Come on now. Some of this is our responsibility, is our it's within our purview to ensure that we are registered, we have the right address, we are not using a post office box, which is illegal. You have to use a real address. That you're using your name, if your name is Robert, you gotta say Robert, not Bob. Don't be walking in there talking about this Bobby, somebody, I'm trying to vote. And they tell me, we ain't got no Bobby. Oh, well, who you have, right? And then you don't know your own name. You got to go in there with the government name, and that government name may have changed to an Islamic name, but whatever government name is on that license and that you registered to vote with, that's what you have to use. The last thing I'll say is when it comes to the signature, I will tell you, Fleming, I might be an anomaly, but my signature does not change. And maybe it's because I watched my mom growing up and her signature didn't change. And that's how I learned how to write her signature really well. Don't tell her. Shh. She, she knows I can write that signature like a pro. But my signature didn't change. I spent a lot of time sitting at home trying to come up with this really nice signature. I was like, well, when they call me doctor, I'm going to be able to have this beautiful signature. But if by chance there's something that happens, I believe I was hospitalized right when I was registering to vote. You can put a note that says, I broke my hand, I broke my writing hand, right? Or um, you can detail why the signature may be different than what is on their file, right? You can do that. You can include that in the notes. One of my sons did that when he broke his hand playing baseball. So I just wanted to say again, this is within your power and your purview. You don't have to say we don't have any recourse. And Sister
Recourse.
Miss Mahasi has her hand up.
Yes, I'll get to Mahassan in just a second. All that you say, I don't disagree with. The individual has to take the responsibility. But I think the motivation for me in what I presented is that we have to have an awareness that there are people who are actively working to get you off the rolls to vote.
Yes.
So
Yes,
let's
I agree
say,
with you.
let's say,
Yes.
let's say a month before I check my registration, everything seems cool. Well, there are people with these roll purges units that they have. They may have come after you've checked and you think everything is okay because of the way that they challenge, and your election board might be a partisan election board, or your state election official may be someone who is lax in what they do. So yes, it is our responsibility. We do have to check. I would say even the day of your voting, check it. Check,
Yes.
because
Yes.
these people are like marauders. They're ballot thieves, and they're working. They're dedicated. They got the money resources with these billionaires that put um, and fund. There's an organization called Donors Trust. They put hundreds of millions of dollars into these different organizations and groups that are doing these different kind of tactics to keep us from being able to vote.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
definitely everything you said is true, but
Yes, ma'am.
you have to be
Yeah.
vigilant. That's a point that I'm going to say.
Yes.
You have to feel
Yes.
like somebody's putting their hand in your pocket, like you on a New York subway at rush hour, and those pickpockets are really going at it, and they trying to get that vote out of your pocket. That's the
Yes.
picture that you got to have.
That's
Sister,
a great
Yes.
way to say
Can
it. That is a great way to
I
say
like
it. I'm gonna use that in my class. Just FYI, use it in
I
class.
like
okay,
can I take 2 more seconds? Go for
okay,
solutions.
okay, and
Just
then we'll
one
go,
more solution.
and then we'll go to
Because
Sister Mahat. Go ahead.
then we go to the waiting citizens there. Yeah, there are several groups that work at the precinct level on election day. And when I served in Forsyth County for the party, I worked with a group called United Face to Save Democracy. That's Dr. Barbara Skinner. She has an organization set up to train what she calls chaplains to be at the voting sites on election day. But you got to go through the training first and look for things like people showing up trying to intimidate people. And there's a whole system set up to call certain lawyers that we have online to address those matters. And I've actually served as a chaplain for a number of years at different locations. And I've had to interfere sometimes to get rid of some knuckleheads who would drive by with their guns on a little rack, and I have to put the authorities behind them. But that's an intended group to try to intimidate people from voting. Don't you be intimidated. And if you have the time, she's designated about 4 states she works in religiously every election cycle. But it's Dr. Barbara Skinner. She's been around for a while, and her group is called United Face to Save Democracy. It's a nonpartisan group, but you are designated a chaplain to operate at a specific voting site if you have the time. And they give you so many hours you can work. It's up to your schedule. But I strongly encourage you to look at that group if you have the time. Again, it's called United Face to Save Democracy. A very good group. Dr. Barbara, I use up my 5 seconds. I give my time to the other visitors who call in the hand.
Whether it's 30 seconds or 5 seconds, it doesn't matter. Sister Mahat, Sister Mahat,
Okay.
you can unmute yourself, Mahatson. You're on mute. Yeah.
Here I am. Assalamu alaikum to everyone.
Walaikum assalam.
Walaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah. I haven't attended your program in quite a while. Been very, very busy, but happy to get back after the recent primary election here in New York. I liked what you were saying, Brother Fleming, about the United Faith. Please say that name again. That's an awesome means of remedying the problems that there is, and
Yes, ma'am.
appear more mostly undercover in preventing the votes. So my question was, in targeting the word awareness, what do you think would be effective in terms of the Muslim Ummahs having regular sessions for citizenship knowledge, voting concepts, and being able to be updated, as you and Sister Amatullah and also Sister Cheryl have been doing with the recent means of preventing people from um, experiencing their constitutional rights in terms of voting. What would you suggest in terms of classes or situations being set up, especially in our association of masajids?
Well, I know Fleming is a very modest man, but I would say one very important step that we can take is to go to the American Coalition for Good Government. He's the current president of that organization. Find out what they are about and encourage the establishment of a chapter in your local community with that organization. Um, from this research, the thing that impressed me the most was that this is a conscious effort. There's a strategy behind it. They have more than one way that they are attempting to disenfranchise us. And so I think that we need to come together and perhaps through ACGG or any other affiliated organization that they collaborate with, come up with a strategy of how in every community there can be at least one person who is interested in the affairs of governance and our participation in governance and the protection of our right to vote, so that we have some kind of communication across the country on if ACGG sends out a flyer on um, registering to vote or upcoming this or contact your state board of elections, that at least that information is disseminated widely. Um, so that would be my suggestion.
I really appreciate. Go ahead, Brother Fleming. I'm sorry. You were going to
I
say
was going to
something.
repeat the name of the organization. It's called United Faiths to Save Democracy, organized by Dr. Barbara Skinner. Again, United Faiths to Save Democracy. I would also concur with Amatullah. We have a meeting every first Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for ACGG. And you're always invited to attend that meeting. At this point, we have a young brother in Wilmington, North Carolina, specifically organizing the workshops. Brother Imam Rahman Sharif, he's the uncle of Imam Talib Sharif in Washington, D.C. But they're doing that. And we also have on that same website a curriculum for young people called ACE, which stands for Ambassador for Civic Engagement. And it sort of gets our youth involved in the whole political process. But again, go to the website, www.americancoalitionforgoodgovernment.org. Feel free to go there and contact any of the offices. You can read some of the articles we've presented so far, position statements, an agenda, etc. And feel free to, join and establish an outreach person to stay in touch with us, and we'll share all the information we have with you and encourage you to be with us every month, 8:30 a.m. the first Sunday. The exception will be next month because there's something happening in Philadelphia on this first Sunday. We don't want to conflict with that. But ordinarily, we have a meeting every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you're welcome to join us.
And I would also say go to the website for fairfight.org. Fair Fight is the organization. that is doing a lot. It started with Stacey Abrams in Georgia, but they are not just limited to Georgia. They do focus quite a bit on southern states, but they have information across the whole country. And
Yes.
go to that if you don't have the Substack app, go to Rights and Insights, which is the new project that they have to bring forward the initiatives that they're working on with Fair Fight. And I think that I think the more we get information and education in this area, the more vibrant the response of our community will be. And then you can also encourage your local leadership to have Fleming and Cheryl to make presentations, either virtually or in person, to your community and trainings, at least to start the beginning
Absolutely.
trainings.
Mhm.
I'm
I,
putting
I'm,
I'm putting them out there to do that work. That's, that's sit
I
back and watch
know.
them.
Well, that's what we mothers do.
Yeah, but
I'll put it like that.
but
That's our
yeah, it's
that's our job.
yeah, it's
Go, go.
it's really important for us, I think, to become active in this area. If you look at that
Yeah.
first presentation on the Substack for Fair Fight called Rights and Insights, um, they do give the name of, and they might have it also on their website, the name of an organization that encourages volunteers at the poll. And that's another thing we can do. Get
Mhm.
volunteers who will be at the poll, who will be the people reviewing provisional ballot, who will be the people reviewing folks coming in with their ID or, like Brother Fleming did as far as, you know, uh, making sure
Yeah.
people are not being intimidated. So I
Well,
think we can
you
be.
raised that issue. If I can interject, Sister Amatullah, because I've worked as a pollster
Mm,
in California.
okay.
It was a paid position, so there was training involved,
Yeah.
right? So, there are openings. What we're witnessing is a resurgence of or an up level, what do they call it in
Scaling up.
technology? Yeah, of seniors and pioneers who've been doing this for years,
Yes.
and they're ready to transition out
Right.
of
Yes.
those responsible positions. So
Right.
um, I would very much encourage us targeting the younger generations to get the training and get involved and become active as people who work with polls, not only volunteer. Um, and the other thing that I was concerned about, and I want to know what you all think about, is we need more people, young people, younger generations, even mid or older generations, who've been trained in running for office. We are not as challenging as I think we could be in projecting and preparing those who would are qualified to fulfill elected office in our different regions. So I'd like to know what you think about that and what encouragement or direction you might offer.
Well, I know Sister
So
Cheryl
let me jump
has
in. Yeah,
ongoing training that she does in just that
yeah,
area. So
yeah,
Cheryl,
I do that.
respond.
I do that. I train people. So you want to run for office, and then on the second half is governance training. But again, let me say something that people may not like. It don't bother me, but I'm just gonna say it. Is that we hear these all the time, and I hear this complaint come from mostly younger than me, right? Because I'm not old yet, but I'm old enough to know better, young enough to remember. And I do know that what they say is that there's this constant call out to say, um, come on in, the water's warm. Put your toe in, jump on in the deep end. They got some life preservers and everything. And then as soon as you jump in the water, they steal all the life preservers, throw the sharks in, take the what you call those people, those lifeguards away, and in the water 2 inches deep. You ain't even got no real pool. So
Okay.
I say that to say this is that as we look at uh, our not just congressional leaders, but also congressional leaders, governors, state legislators aging out, I think there's two things that we can do to make the process more comfortable because what's happening is they don't want to leave. So my answer is to assist, leave, get out the way. It's a next generation's turn, but they don't want to do it. They believe that they're the only ones who's capable of doing whatever work that is, right? At whatever level it is. But you can do what I've seen work really well is do like a Willie Brown or Elihu Harris or, and become the, they call them king makers, but, or queen makers, but become the one who has the knowledge that imparts it to you, help identify those people who not only have the passion, because I'm gonna tell you the truth, passion is not enough. You gotta have thick skin. You gotta have a whole lot more than passion and willingness to so-called serve. If you want to serve, go work in a restaurant. If you want to work, because this is what it is for the people, then you jump into politics. And a lot of people don't understand that. That means that you have to have a level of integrity that is rooted in trust of the people, in your own consistency, in your value structure. And then you also have to show, which is another thing that some of us lack. I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying, a willingness to grow. And our community has to also give people the ability to grow. What you thought 10 or 15 years ago, you might not think now. You may have had a chance I would surely hope that what you thought when you were 20, 25, or 30 is not the same thing you think at 40, 50, 60, 70. Um, Muhammad Ali said, a man who is the same as he in 10 years as he was, the 10 years previous, has wasted 10 years of their life. So you should be willing to grow and demonstrate that you've grown, and the community should be willing to embrace that. Otherwise, we continue to have this thing where people not only replace the truth with convenient lies, but we have communities, plural. And my grandmother used to say, prefer a beautiful lie over an ugly truth. And with that is todo for me for that. Sister, back to you, Sister Amatullah or Brother Fleming.
Let me take 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Can I
Oh,
take three
brother,
seconds this
brother
time?
Fleming. Brother
Put me on
Fleming.
3 seconds.
No,
I
just
would
say,
like,
Thursday,
I would,
just
Thursday,
say a Fleming second. Just say,
3 seconds.
and I
Okay,
have
a Fleming
Fleming
second.
time.
Thank you.
We'll have
A Fleming
Fleming
second.
time.
There's a group that I work with called Democracy North Carolina. And each year we select interns to be trained in the political process, and we pay them X amount of dollars. So the internship program is effective if we're willing to put time, energy, and money to those opportunities to those students. These are all usually college students from around the state of North Carolina. But I work with them for about 15 years, and I do some of the training. And some of them realize once they get involved, this is not for me because you got to have a certain personality, humility, and a desire to want to really help people beyond your own silo. That's the only way for you to grow. And I've had young people to teach me a whole lot about technology. Let me say that again, a whole lot about technology to bring me into the 21st century. So we got to be willing to learn, as the sister said earlier, and find a process. I think internships is an effective way of doing that. but we got to support those with our dollars as well for our students. As one example.
Yes.
And
And
we have to
and then also,
reintroduce this. We have to reintroduce this to our school systems. There's a lot of controversy about education and how it's being downgraded, and those who are happy to try to even envision the concept of getting rid of it. But I remember in high school, standard electives were in the area of government, in the area of understanding the study of the Constitution and civil rights. Of course, those were in the 60s. But you were able to learn so much at an age where it really had an effect on you. As you were talking about the internship probability, that's excellent and needs to go viral. Mentorship needs to go viral, and reinstating the classes that have to do with civics training needs to move down to the middle school level and take advantage of the kind of enthusiasm or the knowledge now that it's become so prevailing in understanding the realities of the country and the what where we reside now, how things have changed. We constantly need to be empowering our children, our students, as they grow up with the knowledge of how things are changing, how they can indeed make a difference. So, Sister Cheryl, did you have a contact number for your training classes? And then I'll stop.
It's not a phone number. It's if you send me an email, I can send it out. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat, please, so we can
Yeah,
all take advantage of it.
sure.
Okay.
Okay, Sister Amatullah, back to you.
okay. One thing that I was going to say based on Brother Fleming's comment of, the students, once they go through the training, they realize, like, this isn't for me. I think it's important for people to see, you don't always have to be the front man. In fact, the ones who have had the greatest influence, you think about your Dick Cheney's before he was VP, you think about your the guy that came up with the Southern strategy. I see his face.
Mm.
Uh,
I know you're talking about.
you know who I'm talking about. But anyway, these were
Yes.
policy makers or researchers or thinkers or, could have been corrupt people
Hmm.
too. But what I'm saying is, you have the candidate, but you also have advisors, you have staff that help that person to do the work. It's not really just all on one person. So maybe you don't have the personality or the tough skin to be that person that's out front. Maybe you can be a policy researcher. Maybe you can be, say, you're an economist. You can be an economist that advises the candidate. You could be a public health person. You can be, a doctor who is involved in public health that you can advise a candidate about what's the consequences of these Medicare and Medicaid cuts. How will it affect if you live in an area that is a rural area? Okay, so I'm in urban California, but what about the people that are up in Ukiah or other places, other counties that are rural counties? Um, what kind of public health advice do the candidates there need to be able to come up with policies and options to present on the state level to counteract any negative mitigation from this from the recent legislation? So I just wanted to put it out there. Everybody does when you go to a movie, If you go to a movie or you see a movie or a TV show, sit and look at the credits. I always do that because I'm saying well, maybe I'll one day find somebody I know or somebody I need to use for a project. You will see for one movie, you might have 200 or 300 people that worked on that movie and get the credits for the work that they did. So I the same thing is true with TV shows. The same thing is true with news productions. Um, it's just on MAP5 that you just have the three of us trying to scrape along, but we have some backup too. Cheryl and Fleming have life experience in this arena. Um, but I'm just saying, there takes a lot to bring policy and strong leadership into play. It really takes a lot. And we can train our youth and we can advise our youth to use whatever skill and interest that they have in the area of governance. And it doesn't have to be all the time, it doesn't have to be full time. Maybe you're a filmmaker, maybe you can come up with a commercial for your, or something to go on Instagram or something to go on YouTube for a candidate. So it's important, I think, for us to start networking and one key thing in organizing is you get people where they are. You let them work where they are, and they will, they inshallah, if they're sincere, they will develop, and they might eventually come to the point where they want to be a candidate. But get them where they are so they can see that they can help. It might just be making phone calls. It might just be sending out texts. It might just be posting things on social media. But wherever their interest is, let them work there. What was that old lesson? Big fields await the wide awake man, or something like that. So,
Yes.
it's a lot that we have learned that we can apply in what's going on today. So I think that's important. But good points. I remember when Sandra Day O'Connor, when she resigned from the Supreme Court, her number one concern was her husband's health, but her number two concern was she set up an organization there where she was from to deal with civic education for the people there in her state, and hopefully for that to spread throughout the country, because she realized that with the dropping of civics as really being a required area of study, um, our society had really suffered. And in her later years, she wanted to work in that area. Sister Mahassan, I think you said before that you would stop there, but we'll give you one more time because you, like Brother Fleming, have seconds and minutes.
But you only have a few seconds because we're closing out. It is 12
12
o'clock.
o'clock. Go ahead, Mahassan. Mahassan, you're on mute.
So mute.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. Yes, just briefly, maybe two minutes or so. There's a set of books that were gifted to me by Brother Kareem Abdul Haq, and because of the study that I do in New York in the Clara Muhammad School curriculum development, we're writing another curriculum. But there are four books about governance. Sister
You're breaking up. You're breaking up. Are you walking around?
and his
Sister
name
Mahassan.
is Kareem Abdul-Haq.
Sister Mahassan.
That
Mahassan. Please.
will come up. The first one is called the 13th Amendment Freedom Week Manual. And this is over a 700-page book of background research, consultations in the history coming out of the 13th Amendment. and freedom concept of economic science, a free and peaceful society. So that name to Google is Kareem Abdul Haq, and the titles will come up. Okay, I'll stop right there. Thank you for mentioning about education, emphasizing that school board members have a lot of impact and influence to bear. So our educational system, as Prophet Muhammad established, the right to public education isn't destroyed. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Ms. Mahatma. So, any other comments from any of our other participants? Brother Ismail, Brother Muhammad, Sister Tawhida, Sister Martha? I'll give you a minute. We are a little bit over time, but we did start a little bit late. If you have a comment or a question, you can unmute yourself. If not, we're going to turn it back over to Sister Cheryl to take us out. And we will look forward to you joining us next Monday, which will be July the 14th, on MAP 5, Muslim American Power 5. Sister Cheryl?
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I do want to say that the one thing that we can do is we can do education, we can do recruitment of new persons to run at every age level and every demographic. But the biggest thing that I see, that I hear, especially back from, I mean, in my circles, but also just from the this circle of people who are interested in running. And the thing that I see is there's a saying that we have, it says, si puedes verla, puedes ella. If you can see her, you can be her. So if you can see a brother Fleming, doing the work in the community, you know that the possibilities are there. If you see me, if you see Sister Amatullah doing the work in the community, then you know that the possibilities are there. It's very difficult to step out. Yes, we have lots of these. I'm the first, I'm the only. Nobody likes being the first and the only. I can tell you that from experience. And it's not something that you jump into just to say that, because it can be a very not only lonely but disempowering kind of existence, which is why you see people not staying in those positions for a very long time. So part of this is we have to do, and we, meaning the collective Ummah, have to do a better job of not only identifying who can run for office, but supporting them, getting them elected, and then once in office, supporting the elected officials in office is just as important as getting people elected, so that you don't have one or two-term individuals because they find it just too difficult. I have two quotes for you today as we log out. First of all, from my grandmother's words, but I'm going to give you a Sada Shakur. Seems just like it's fitting to quote Sada Shakur, and that had nothing to do with me listening to Tupac on the way to work.
Sure.
None. It may have a little bit, but I'm just saying. She said, the less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. The less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. And we can talk some more about this next time, but really it really has to do with where do you put it in the realm of your thinking and the realm of what you do. We talked about earlier, when you're so mired in it that you can't step and you can't make decisions and you just give up. That's where that comes from. And the other thing that I'll tell you, that I've heard this from day one about being in public service, whether that's community, is at an elected level, appointed level, or is just the work that we do because that's how our families taught us. The love for our people must be greater than the love for any one person. The love for our people, our communities, each other must be greater than the love of one person. And that, I will tell you, is a change in perspective for a lot of people. So, in my words of mi abuela, when you change what you see also changes. Have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Do something for someone without the expectation that they will do something in return or that you will get the spotlight or remuneration or anything else. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes it'll make you feel good if you do it that way. Be small and tell somebody you love their aquamarine scarf. Looks really good on this color skin we have. Or you told somebody, like we started off the meeting, I love that dashiki you're wearing, brother. Looking really regal over there. Just one little thing you can do each day. We don't know the battles people are facing. All of us are facing something that people don't understand what struggles we're going through. So if you can do one thing, commit to doing one thing every day to uplift someone else without the expectation of anything. Don't put it on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or you ain't gotta tell anybody. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Be prayerful, be powerful, be politically engaged, and be philanthropic. And we will see you, inshallah, back here next Monday, 1 o'clock Eastern. See, I start on your coast. 12 o'clock Midway Central, and 10 o'clock on the Best Coast. And with that, sister, are we ready?
Yes, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Thank you, everyone. MAP5, Muslim
Appreciate
American
you.
Power 5. We appreciate you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bye.